Financial markets punish chaos. Not immediately, not every day, but sooner or later, almost always. The problem is that chaos doesn't always look like chaos. Very often, it looks like activity, like being busy, like having things written down and under control. There are numbers, there are screenshots, there is a trade history, but clarity is missing. And at some point, a strange feeling appears. You're tracking a lot, yet you can't clearly say what is actually improving and what is not. Results happen, but they feel accidental. In trading, this becomes especially visible. Almost every trader eventually starts tracking. Trades, P and L, sometimes even detailed notes. At first, it genuinely helps. There is a sense of structure. It feels like control is finally there. But then time passes. Weeks, months. And despite all the tracking, the same mistakes keep repeating. Good weeks are followed by bad ones. Confidence goes up and down. So a natural question appears. If we track so much, why does progress still feel unclear? The issue is usually not discipline, and not lack of effort. In fact, most people do too much. Too much data, too many metrics, too many notes that don't lead anywhere. Information accumulates, but feedback doesn't. This is where tracking ends and a system should begin, because data alone doesn't create improvement, only structure does. There is one core principle behind my approach. Trading should not be viewed as a collection of isolated trades. It should be treated as a repeatable decision-making process. And if it's a process, it needs clear layers. In my system, there are three of them: trades, setups, and overall performance. Each layer answers a different question. Together, they form a closed feedback loop. Let's start with trades. A trade is not just an entry and an exit. It's a decision made in a specific context. So when I log a trade, I'm not trying to write long explanations. I focus on clarity. I track the market, the direction, the risk, and the result. And most importantly, every trade is linked to a setup. Not just labeled, actually connected. Because without that link, you can't tell whether a result comes from skill or from randomness. I stop looking at individual outcomes. I stop asking, was this trade good or bad? Instead, I ask a different question. What happens when the same idea is executed over and over again? That's where randomness starts to fade. One losing trade doesn't tell me anything, but 10 trades built on the same idea do. Now I can see patterns, execution errors, timing issues, risk inconsistencies. This is no longer about winning or losing. It's about isolating decision quality, because they turn trades into something measurable, not outcomes, decisions. Setups are the heart of the system. Instead of treating every trade as unique, I group trades by ideas. Each setup has a clear definition, specific conditions, and a reason why it exists. This changes the focus completely. The question is no longer, was this trade good or bad? It becomes, how does this setup perform over time? One losing trade stops feeling dramatic. One winning trade stops creating false confidence. Patterns begin to appear naturally. Once trades are connected to setups, P and L stops being just a number. It becomes a signal. Instead of asking, how much did I make this week? I can ask, which ideas actually work? Which ones look good but slowly hurt results? Which ones need refinement or removal? This is no longer emotional analysis. It's structural. At the performance level, I'm not trying to analyze everything. I look for simple signals: stability, degradation, and deviations. Nothing complicated. The goal is not to outsmart the market. The goal is to clearly see what is changing and why. When the system is built correctly, this becomes obvious. On a daily level, logging trades takes very little time, not because it's rushed, but because the structure already exists. There's no decision fatigue, no question of what to write. That lowers friction, and low friction is what makes consistency possible. Weekly review is where the system really pays off. Instead of scrolling through random trades, I review performance by setup. And this is often where the gap becomes visible between how things feel and how they actually are. The biggest change this system creates is not in numbers, it's in decision confidence. When you know what you're trading, why you're trading it, and how it behaves over time, guessing disappears. Losses stop feeling personal. Wins stop creating emotional spikes. What remains is process. And for a system to actually work long term, it has to feel natural to use. Otherwise, friction builds up and consistency breaks. Going back to the beginning, the issue for most people is not that they don't track anything. It's that their tracking doesn't lead to decisions. A system should do more than store data. It should make the next step obvious. And this is the simplest test I know. If your tracking disappeared tomorrow, would you actually lose insight or just data? That's how I track trades, setups, and P&L in one system. Not to feel productive, not to feel in control, but to have clarity. So at any moment, it's clear what actually deserves attention and what is just noise. If you're interested in seeing how a system like this looks when it's already fully structured, I've left an example in the description below. It's something you can explore and adapt to your own approach, just as a reference point for how all these pieces can live together in one place.